Good evening and welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. On the program tonight, in the biggest escalation of the Ukraine war in months, Russia today bombed the Ukrainian capital Kyiv. Several civilian areas were struck, massive explosions. The death toll at this stage, 11 at least. Now the Russian attack comes as tit for tat for the recent attack on a Russian bridge across the Kerch Strait, which links Crimea with the rest of Russia. We'll try and explain what happened today with a lot of videos and bring you many more details. Firstly, 8:15 a.m. Kyiv time. Multiple explosions, massive blasts, many in downtown areas, never before attacked by Russia, as you can see in some of those videos. Now, one of the attacks was on a bridge, a popular walkway, partially made out of glass. As it turns out, this wasn't destroyed. We'll play out this video to give you an idea of what exactly it's all about. It's this particular walkway, as you can see over there. The attack took place, but eventually it wasn't destroyed. Now let's move to the next video, a video of a child who was filming at the time of the attack. She had a cell phone. She had a close call. She felt the blast wave from one of the explosions and lived to tell the story. And another missile hit the Shevchenko Park, one of the largest and most popular parks in Kyiv itself. And again, these are civilian areas, these are where children play. Why was this targeted in the manner in which it was? Here's what the Ukrainian president had to say.
Ранок важкий, маємо справу з терористами, десятки ракет, іранські шахіди. У них дві мішені, енергооб'єкти по всій нашій державі. Київщина і Хмельниччина, Львів і Дніпро, Вінниця, Франківщина, Запоріжжя, Сумщина, Харківщина, Житомирщина, Кіровоградщина, Південь держави. Вони прагнуть паніки і хаосу, хочуть знищити нашу енергосистему, вони безнадійні.
Now, the Russian President Vladmir Putin did claim responsibility. He warned Ukraine to take him seriously.
В случае продолжения попыток проведения на нашей территории терактов, ответы со стороны России будут жесткими и по своим масштабам будут соответствовать уровню угроз, создаваемых Российской Федерацией. Ни у кого не должно быть никаких в этом сомнений.
Now, this is why Russia attacked, because just 2 days ago, Ukraine is believed to have struck this bridge, which we'll now show to you. A truck bomb brought down a part of the motor carriageway and several train coaches were set on fire. This is satellite imagery of the Kerch Bridge. Now, you can see it on fire over there, partially restored at this stage. Now, the Kerch Bridge is located here. It links Crimea, which Russia annexed in 2014 with mainland Russia. Now, the attack itself has been widely condemned by international leaders and comes at a time when Russia clearly appears to be losing the war. Why? Well, in the east of Ukraine, Russia has lost more than 10,000 square kilometers of territory. And in the south, they are under intense attack near the city of Kherson. If Kherson falls, it could be a gateway into Crimea, which Putin appears ready to defend at any cost and which Zelensky is insistent on recapturing. Now, New Delhi wants an immediate end to the hostilities and says India is deeply concerned at the escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, including targeting of infrastructure and the death of civilians. We reiterate that escalation of hostilities is in no one's interest. Now, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has called the attacks Russia's horrific and indiscriminate attacks on civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. Now, what's the bottom line over here? This is perhaps the most dangerous part of the war in Ukraine in months, perhaps ever, because Putin has attacked civilian areas in Kyiv today, a blatant escalation which leaves many wondering whether his threat to use nuclear weapons is more than just rhetoric. So there's a lot for us to actually discuss on the program today. I'm joined by Vlad Sydorenko, a journalist who I've had the privilege of working with across Ukraine very, very closely. We're also joined by Rajiv Gupta, Managing Director of Kusum, Ukraine, one of the companies which has had a huge role in the economy of Ukraine, perhaps the largest Indian company in that country. Xenia Kondratieva is an independent journalist based in Russia, in St. Petersburg. We're joined also by Sviatoslav Yurash. He's a Ukrainian MP, and Glenn Carl, who is the former Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Transnational Threats, career CIA officer. Thank you all very much for being with us. Vlad, let me come to you first. Can you describe to us what you saw and what you heard this morning?
I was woke up with the blowings and the missiles attacks from the seas, from the territory of Belarus and the territory of Russia. So it was explosions. It was 500 meters from my window, out of my studio and my office. So it was 500 meters around.
And was there a lot of damage?
A lot of damage, and a lot of people died. More than 10 people died, and 60 people was injured today. But you know, if you give me 30 seconds, I need to say some words that should be listened, I guess. You know, Vishnu, Mr. Chamberlain and Daladier made peace with the war criminal Hitler in 1938, trying to avoid the war. And they received historical disgrace and war. But in 1938, the whole world was silent, you know. In 1939, the war criminal Hitler attacked Poland, and then the whole world plunged into darkness. Yeah. Then the earth gave birth into new Hitler, Putin. The world was silent during the war in Chechnya. In 2008, the world remained silent for Georgia. In 2014, the world remained silent for Crimea and Donbass. In 2022, the world continues to be afraid when the new Hitler attacked Ukraine for the second time. Huge countries, a lot of countries, as well as India, other big countries, will take the historical responsibility, like Chamberlain and Daladier, for a new darkness into which the world will plunge. We gave up our nuclear weapons in exchange for security guarantees. After 30 years, the world answered that there are no guarantees. Every country should know that nuclear weapons are not a defense. They are an indulgence for crime. This is a new reality that big states have created. Just to be friends with Hitler and buy his oil, you know.
No, Vlad, and I hear your passion, Vlad, and I hear what you're saying, but I think India has begun changing its position, at least in some of the statements. They've been more direct against Russia, including today where there's been a call for peace.
But I want to say that the great states and their people will pay a very high price
and I
for
take
their
that.
fear and greed.
I agree with you. I do believe that around the world, countries will pay a toll, because it is all interconnected.
Well,
Vlad, half a second. Vlad, let me go across to Rajiv Gupta, Managing Director of Kusum, Ukraine. Again, Mr. Gupta, what did you wake up to this morning? Could you describe to us what you saw, what you heard?
No, Vishnu, good evening. Can I start with something else? As you mentioned that this bridge belongs to Russia. Okay, what we are doing in India? In India, if anybody built anything without any permission, illegal structure, we are destroying by the bulldozer. This is a normal thing. I think Crimea belongs to Ukraine, not to Russia. This is illegally captured by Russia, annexed by Russia. If I will say tomorrow that moon belongs to me, that doesn't mean that moon belongs to me. This is a crazy situation. Putin with his team come to Ukraine under the slogan that Ukraine is a Nazi state. Now tell me, where is the Nazis? Who is Nazi? Who's attacking with the precise, what they call precise missiles, attacking the playground?
Because there was nothing which was precise. I mean, these were missiles targeting playgrounds, buildings of civilians,
so
roadsides.
Still India, I really amazing, like it's in a negative way that still we are not getting that kind of a support. Okay, I do agree with you that India is changing their views, but as a residents of Ukraine and a citizen of India, I really love if India can support more to Ukraine, because any country can behave in that way and can capture the other country, and it's like a kind of ambition of one person to take capture and make his own empire and killing millions of people.
Yeah.
We cannot keep quiet with this.
Rajiv, how many years have you spent, just for the benefit of our viewers, in Ukraine?
I am living since 88.
Since
During Soviet Union, I came for studies, 34 years.
And to see, and you know, it's affected you personally. Your factories, the people who work over there, your business interests, your friends. Can you tell us how this has changed your entire life?
Yeah, see,
you have factories in the east of Ukraine also.
Yeah, it's almost 23 kilometers from Russian border. If I earlier used to visit my factory once in 6 months, now I'm visiting every 15 days to boost morale of my people. One thing is very clear, we are not afraid of terrorists like Putin. For me, he is a terrorist. This is my personal view. There is no doubt that everything what he is doing is behaving in an absolutely bad manner to kill civilians.
Yeah.
It's affecting a lot. You know, its logistic is totally gone. Black Sea is totally blocked by Russian army.
Yeah.
So the logistic is a big problem. But you know, he cannot broke us. We will still working, and I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And the people are not afraid of him. I was in a city today in my car, and yes, very few people are there, but nobody is afraid.
Yep.
Now, after the war of 7 months, we are becoming more strong.
Yeah.
You know, it's a month of October is a month of holy month for us. You know, for me, Putin is like Ravan.
Yeah.
So we will win.
Right. In fact, Mr. Goncharenko, you know, Rajiv has called Ukraine his home since 1988. You know, I mean, he says us, and when he says us, he refers to Ukraine as his identity, maybe an Indian citizen, but Ukraine is part of his soul. I mean, that seems absolutely clear. And there are so many people from India who continue to call Ukraine their home as well. But that's not really my question. I want to ask you, what did you wake up and see this morning?
I have to reply?
Yes. No, one sec. Mr. Goncharenko, go ahead.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to tell you that Ukrainian society is a very open society, and we are happy to see Indians, other representatives of other nations working in Ukraine, living in Ukraine, and we are happy to see such people as Rajiv in our country, and we hope that after we will win, more Indians will come to Ukraine to study, to make business, and it's absolutely great. I can tell you that today was the worst day from February 24 from the point of view of missile attacks. So almost 100 missiles Putin sent against our country, including Iranian kamikaze drones, by which he attacked us. And he said then openly that I did it and we used highly precise weapon. So if you will see, you can show your producers, they can show video how the playground was hit. How the
let's show that picture of let's show that video of that playground and of buildings and of that little girl. Go ahead.
Yes, Kyiv University and others. So that was just civilian objects, and Putin absolutely deliberately, precisely attacked our civilians because he can't do anything with our army. He is weak. He is losing the war against our army, so he takes revenge against just women and children, killing them on Monday morning, those who are just coming to their work or to university. So that is the reality, who is Putin. And yes, as a member of the parliament, I want to tell you that we see changes in the Indian position, and thank you for this, but still, in United Nations, India abstains when there are resolutions against this war. And I'm sure that all Indian people want to see peace on the planet. And I'm sure that all Indian people, I can just want to remind that India is the biggest democracy on the planet. And you also know what is to have neighbors, not democratic countries. And I'm sure that you want to see international law in the world. And to do all of this, you should support Ukraine, not to abstain. but to vote yes and to help us to finish this war as soon as possible and to restore international order in the benefit of everybody on the planet.
Yeah. Glenn, Carl, I ask you this question often when we speak, and I'll ask it again because it's relevant again. What is the off-ramp for Putin?
Well, that's the question that everyone in the West has been getting wrong, myself included, for certainly for the past year, if not for 2 decades. Putin has been offered multiple off-ramps, as you put it, rational ways to achieve part of what he was seeking to achieve while avoiding a catastrophe and the risk of a war. In each case, he has been quite consistent. And he rejects them out of hand and is pursuing his ends within the framework of his views, which are that America is an existential threat, Ukraine is a pawn of America, Ukraine does not exist as an independent society and culture, and he will eradicate it from the earth and absorb it. Nothing that the West or Ukraine has done has stopped that objective. So now we're in a situation where wars always accelerate and become existential. However, Putin is rational, so he is likely to choose the least bad option if that's all he has as a choice, or he will continue to advance his own ends. So there is no real off-ramp except the progressive destruction of Russia's military capability and sustained and increasing support by allied nations of Ukraine to Ukraine. Putin and the Russian military historically have used terror, have ignored international norms of warfare, will target children and civilians, will rape women, and will indiscriminately attack. We can see one example from multitudes, how they conducted the war in Syria, which was simply to eradicate cities because they couldn't conquer them militarily, or it seemed to be an easier solution for Russia. And that's more or less what he is trying to do now. Sure. So the solution is to provide Ukraine with the weapons it needs to resist and to liberate the territories that Russia has currently occupied.
Yeah. You know, Xenia, as an independent journalist in Russia, what we've seen in the last couple of days, widespread protests, people not wanting, in terms of people not wanting to join, not wanting to be a part of the conscription drive, many are leaving the country. Number two, there's been a change in Russian state television. There is criticism of Russian losses in the east of Ukraine. Is there a sense that the mood is changing against Putin? Can that even happen in Russia?
Well, the history will tell whether this can happen in Russia. See, it's difficult to say whether the mood is changing. Yes, slowly. I can definitely say one thing. When I started reporting on the conflict, when I started doing my trips to Donbass, to the Russian-controlled part of Donbass, and when I was coming back to Moscow, to St. Petersburg, I would see that people living their lives without any idea what's happening there. And that was, you know, that was such a shock to me, because when you live under the shelling, under constant shelling, when you go and do your interviews and there is shelling, you know, it's a different reality. So I think after mobilization was announced in Russia on 21st September, it's only then when lots of people, lots of families realize that, oh, the war is real, because, you know, people are being drafted. You said there are protests. Well, there are, but there are also people who, you know, who didn't escape, whether they didn't have an opportunity to escape or they didn't want to escape. I know people who voluntarily went to fight, and I've met a lot of volunteers, Russian volunteers fighting in Donbass. So, you know, it's different. The attitude is different. But I think the more... people don't want the escalation. This is, you asked everyone how they woke up to today's morning.
Yeah.
You know, we here wake up every day expecting, you know, an escalation. Some are worried about nuclear attacks. So there is no feeling like the war is somewhere far away. That's not the feeling anymore. So these attacks, they were expected. And many in the Russian society, with different degree, you know, of energy about it, they were asking, like, when will Russia respond? When will finally Russia respond? Where are those red lines?
Right.
And this is something that has been discussed here in Russia and globally. When will Russia respond, and how will it respond? So it responded, and now it's you know, it's called a terrorist state.
So there is a big escalation one way or the other. Glenn, let me ask you this: the nuclear threat, is it real, or I mean, is it even conceivable?
That was to me. If so, the answer is yes. It is real. Technology has changed, unfortunately, in the past decade or 20 years, but particularly the past decade. And Russia, in the relevant technology, has been the most aggressive. Meaning that whereas for all of our lives, nuclear war has been the way to avoid great power conflict, the danger of nuclear war, because it meant hundreds of millions, possibly, of dead. Now there are nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons they're called, that have 1/100th the yield of the bomb in Hiroshima, so that they are part of the military planning of the Russians. The Americans developed this but have backed away from it in recent years. The Russians have hundreds of tactical nuclear weapons, and their thinking apparently is that they can be used in a way to eliminate a theater threat, so the Ukrainian army around Kherson, perhaps. Of course, the danger is that even the small nuclear weapon will have fallout, and for the Russians, the bad luck is that the prevailing winds in Ukraine blow from the west, so they might be bombing themselves a little bit also. But it is, unfortunately, apparently a real possibility that Russia could use a tactical nuclear weapon, thinking that it could be contained. Now, the American response to this apparently has been quite explicit and insistent that if Russia were to use a tactical nuclear weapon, that the United States and NATO would respond massively, conventionally, and obliterate all Russian forces in Ukraine, in the Crimea, and possibly also including parts of Russia.
Yeah. So this is actually one of the most dangerous phases of this war. Look, I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. Rajiv, Vlad, and Oleski, stay safe where you are. It's very unsafe of late. And let's just hope that, who knows, there is some sort of an off-ramp. Is there? Nobody knows. It's been 7 months. We've been asking the same question. It's just war all the way with the loss of human life. We're out of time on this program. From all of us here, good night.